The title of my lecture is From the Intermarium to the Three Seas, the History of Central Europe Integration. In the Jagiellonian times, Poland had a strong tradition on interest in the Balkans, particularly Moldavia. All this was set in the context of centuries-long struggle with Turkey. Turkish invasion were the biggest course of the whole Balkans Peninsula for many centuries, and the First Polish Republic considered itself a bulwark, a Christendom, defending Europe against the spread of Islam. In the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, the Republic of Poland was engaged in a dynastic and political struggle for influence over whole Central Europe. It can be said that it was consistent defense of Europe against the influence of Asian civilization. The mechanism of Asian civilization were characteristic not only of Turkey, but also of Russia, which was to a large extent under the cultural influence of Mongolia. The mission of Poland was thus defined in terms of the defense of latent civilization against the forces of barbarian Asia. The Jagiellonian dynasty extended in influence over countries and nations from the Baltic Sea to the Black Sea and the Adriatic Sea. This area saw intensive development of economic, cultural, military, and political cooperation. Despite the collapse of Polish state in the 18th century, the idea of cooperation between countries and nations in Central Europe remained present in Polish political thought. After the rebirth of the Polish state after World War I, this idea was implemented through Józef Piłsudski's concept of the Intermarium. The aim was to build a community of states in Central Europe that would separate Germany from Russia and protect their independence through military and political alliance. In the 1930s, Polish diplomacy persistently developed the so-called Intermarium plan, a plan to form a coalition of states in Central Europe which were capable of defending themselves against the German and the Soviet threat. This plan involved countries from the Baltic, Finland, down to the Black Sea, and the Aegean Sea, Romania, Greece. In 1934, the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs drew up a very interesting document, a memorandum entitled The Principles of the Polish Policy in Central Europe and the Balkans. This document alludes to the tradition of the Jagiellonian Poland from the 15th and 17th centuries when the Republic of Poland gained space for independence development in Central Europe. At that time, both Moscow and the German Reich had no authority over this area. The author of this document describes the situation in the following way. It is not only our country that is a special situation because of the location of Poland between two large states, Germany and Russia. In this part of Europe, we find a great number of medium-sized and smaller countries in a similar situation. In that case, whether we like it or not, we have to become a kind of signpost for these states and show them how important it is to create such conditions which would neutralize as much as possible the influence of superpowers and would enable these states to gain freedom of development. In the 1930s, the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Józef Beck, was deeply preoccupied with the idea of Intermarium, to which he devoted a lot of attention and effort. This project has solid historical foundation but also look to the future. In the interwar period, Poland indeed seemed most obviously threatened by Germany as well as USSR. Practically, no other Central Europe states was under such serious threat. It is thus evident that the vision of Intermarium in the interwar period was a long-range project whose realization would take years. Poland in the interwar period was not a power that could influence so many states, bringing them effectively together around itself. On the other hand, there is no doubt that it was probably the only project at the time which gave the country situation between Germany and Russia a chance to defend their independence. It was to be seen very soon during the German and Soviet invasion of the Central European countries during the Second World War. It is necessary to add that in the interwar period, Poland and Romania laid the foundation for the Intermarium coalition between the Baltic Sea and the Black Sea. It took place in the political, military, as well as the economic sphere. Just before the outbreak of the Second World War, against a background of the division of Czechoslovakia, the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs, Józef Beck, went to Romania on 18 October 1938 to convince Romanian politicians to forge an alliance between Poland, Romania, and Hungary, aiming to the creation of a power in Central Europe which would counter the imminent threat. This idea did not stand the test of time due to the attack on Poland by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union in 1939. In 1942, Polish Prime Minister Władysław Sikorski and Czechoslovak President Edvard Beneš announced a declaration of the creation of a confederation after the war, aimed at defending Central Europe from the pressure and neighboring powers, Russia and Germany. Stalin's opposition and Beneš's decision to ally Czechoslovakia with the USSR put an end to this project. However, it remained present in Polish political thought. After World War II, during the communist era, ideas related to the integration of Central Europe showed up in circles of the Polish government in exile in Great Britain and in circles associated with Jerzy Giedroyć Kultura. It was a magazine published by Polish immigrants in Paris. After World War II, Central European countries were subordinated to the Soviet Union and thus treated as an integral part of the Eastern Bloc. No major initiatives to unite Central Europe against Moscow were possible. However, a community of nations oppressed by the communist Soviet Union began to form. The situation changed radically after the collapse of the Eastern Bloc and the Soviet Union. Professor Zbigniew Brzeziński, as well-known American political scientist of Polish, suggests returning to the idea of creating a Polish-Czechoslovak confederation. Prime Minister Tadeusz Mazowiecki and President Václav Havel returned to the idea of Polish-Czechoslovak cooperation in 1990. On February 15, 1991, Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Hungary signed the Visegrad Declaration, establishing the beginnings of the so-called Visegrad Triangle. The singing took place in the Gothic castle in Visegrad. It was here in 1335 that a meeting of the rulers of Poland, Bohemia, and Hungary took place. After this, the background of Czechoslovakia, January 1, 1993, the name Visegrad Triangle changed to Visegrad Group, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. The group was natural formula for regional cooperation between countries seeking integration with the European Union. The countries had similar historical experiences of being part of the Eastern Bloc. The countries of Central Europe struggled for long years with Soviet domination, and after the fall of communism, they were forced to rebuild their destroyed economies. In Polish political thought, the integration of Central Europe was a part of the political heritage and the Jagiellonian dynasty. Over the years, cooperation within the group has become somewhat looser, particularly the Czech Republic attitude. Prague believed that it could integrate with the West more quickly without looking at Warsaw, Bratislava, and Budapest. Poland was the country most committed to the integration of Central Europe, a country that saw its strategic interest in strengthening the Visegrad Group. On May 1, 2004, the Visegrad Group countries joined the European Union, which, on the one hand, fulfilled the main objective of this format, but on the other hand, defined new challenges for countries of Central Europe. The countries of this part of the continent were treated by the West as a second-class state, which they did not want to accept. The Visegrad Group project was continued by so-called 3C initiatives. In 2015, Polish President Andrzej Duda organized a conference entitled Lech Kaczyński and Central and Eastern Europe. Leaders of countries in the region who had cooperated with President Lech Kaczyński were invited. Among those who attended were the former President of Czech Republic, Estonia, Lithuania, Romania, and Georgia. President Duda said, "Today, most of Central and Eastern Europe is talking about the need to build a community stretching from the Baltic Sea through the Adriatic Sea to the Black Sea, about the need to build an energy community, including for the development of transport infrastructure." It should be added that all this happened after Russia's first aggression against Ukraine in 2014. There were a great sense of threat in Central Europe. In September 2015, President Andrzej Duda met with the President of Croatia, Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović. At the time, the topic of North-South cooperation was raised, and rather, the President visited the graves of important figures associated with initiatives to unite Central Europe, King Władysław Warneńczyk, Józef Piłsudski, Lech Kaczyński. President Duda said, "Central Europe is an excellent example of how powerful and creative a force freedom is. Freedom, whose sisters are economic freedom and self-government. They open up space for realization of both ambition. Poland and the whole Central Europe are fascinating testament to the opportunities that freedom brings. We can serve as an inspiration for the positive effects of cooperation the creation of joint initiatives and projects. Based of this political idea, the first meeting on the 3Cs initiatives took place in New York on September 29, 2015. It consisted of 13 countries: Austria, Bulgaria, Croatia, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, Hungary, and Greece. In recent years, this has become a very interesting formula for cooperation between Central European countries, which is supported by Washington. Thank you for your attention.